Hey, building a self-sufficient life. Your journey toward a self-sufficient life in this crazy, modern, busy world, right? How do you do it? Welcome to Goose Pond Hideout with Carrot, the cat. And I'm Rob, right? So I want to share my experiences, the lessons and things that I've learned in life, my wisdom with you on living this self-sufficient, journey to a self-sufficient life, right? And I get comments frequently from folks watching the videos like you. And when they say things, oh, you can't live self-sufficient in today's world, and thinking you can go off into the wilderness and disappear from society and never be heard from again and live all alone or whatever, like a hermit in a cave or something, or a little homemade lean-to teepee or whatever for the rest of your life. That's not what we're talking about. I like the modern world. I like the things that we have. I like YouTube. I like electricity. I like having food at the grocery store, shopping online at the various, Amazon and places like that. Hey, I like all that, right? But the point is being more self-sufficient, is being less reliant on those things. And that doesn't mean you can't enjoy them, but you don't want to be 100% reliant on them. You want to be able to sort of, like, quote, take care of yourself. And then something that you'll hear a lot about, and you see, a lot of videos and things, is people say, be preppers, right? And to me, there's a big distinction between being a prepper and being someone that is living a self-sufficient life. And it could be kind of a subtle difference, and there is a little bit of overlap. The two things do overlap with each other. But to me, someone that's prepping is someone that's living in the modern world, has a job, has a car payment, has a mortgage, rent, whatever, and is is a consumer in the modern world, but they're preparing for a disaster, for something that's going to go wrong. And they've got their go-to bag, and they got their buckets of 25-year prepared foods, and they may even have a bug out place to go to. But to me, that's really, again, they're living in the real world, and they're prepared for disaster, whatever that might be. And then they're going to go, live for a, quote, short amount of time. It's not a forever thing. And that's, they're 20, they got 4 or 5 buckets of 25-year shelf life prepared food. They got some clothes, they got some batteries, they got some drinking water in containers. But at some point that stuff's going to wear out, and then what are you going to do? That's my thought with people that call themselves preppers. And I'm talking about you living the life day to day. And I'm not talking, the other thing people say, well, you want to go live like Little House on the Prairie or the Waltons or something. And that's kind of true, but again, I'm not talking about going back in time. I'm just saying that when we live in the world that we're in, there's some common sense and preparedness there. And because when you think about things, the two things that you want to be self-reliant on, the two biggies are energy, electricity, and food. What are you going to eat, kind of thing. Those are sort of the two big things to focus on. Yeah, you need clothes, and you need other things, but we need a source of power which is, you know, electricity or some kind of fuel to run a generator, for example. And we need something to eat or we're going to starve to death. And that's one of the reasons going off and living in the wild like a hermit, you know, you're probably going to starve to death, you're going to get hurt and die, or you know, get sick. And so who wants to live like that, right? But you want, you know, the self-reliance. So like, you know, the energy thing, you know, my experience is we've replaced all the lights in our house with LED lights. And we didn't do it all right away, but as you know, as we replaced things, we upgraded and we've replaced with LEDs. And we have appliances that use less electricity and, you know, things like that. And I have absolutely no intention of disconnecting the power and going off grid. But we could, you know, if I woke up tomorrow morning and the grid was down, we'd survive, we'd be okay. We wouldn't be as comfortable as we are right now, but we'd be okay. But I can't see calling up the power company and saying, come pull the meter because we're going to live off grid. And even though we could do that, the one thing is this time of the year in the summertime, air conditioners would be kind of tough. Power in our house 9 months out of the year is easy peasy, wouldn't be any trouble at all. But the hot summer months with the air conditioner running, I mean, our air conditioner uses more electricity than we use for everything else in the house, even hot water. And you never know, down the road we might want to sell the place, and having it connected to the grid would be a valuable thing. And the same thing, you know, with food, is having a garden, having chickens, having a source of food for yourself. You know, I'm not going to give up going to Publix, going to Aldi, going to, oh, Aldi. Aldi has these great frozen pizzas that I really love. They used to be like $2.29 a piece. I don't know, I think they're like $3 now or something. But I buy these pizzas at Aldi, frozen pizzas, and they have 4 meat and pepperoni and sausage and supreme or whatever. But you know, I buy a stack of the frozen pizzas and keep them in the freezer, you know, so we need power for our freezer. And every Friday night we have a frozen pizza, and we put more onions and peppers on it. And if we have some hamburger or chicken or something left over from the week, you know, we'll sprinkle that on top, put a little bit of extra shredded cheese or whatever, and you know, we build it up, throw it in the air fryer, little electric, you know, 110, 120 oven. It draws 1.3 kilowatts, about like what a hair dryer would draw. And you know, we cook our frozen pizza on Friday night. That's our big meal on Friday night, frozen pizza from Aldi. You know, and of course Walmart and all of that. But those, you know, I'm not going to give up those things. But again, if we got in our car today and drove to the grocery store, whatever that is where you are, wherever you grocery shop, and the shelves were empty or the doors were locked or whatever, you know, we'd be good to go. An example of my experience from the past is, you may remember Y2K if you're more than 25, 30 years old, right? When 2000. And you know, way back in the early days when they started building computers, memory was really expensive and hard to come by. So somebody in their bright mind of how much memory they were going to save is they did just 2-digit years. So, you know, 55, 57, 59. And so everybody was worried that the computer world was going to crash when we got to the year 2000, because it was going to go from 99 to 00, and everything would stop working because it wouldn't understand that 00 wasn't 1900 and it was 2000. And one of the things that they told people to do at the time was make sure you have 2 to 3 weeks worth of food in your house, just in case, you know, there's a issue and things collapse, and it takes us a, you know, prep for the fact that it might be down for a week or two. And we're all laughing, you know, up there in Maine, us Mainers up there, and we have like 6 months worth of food all the time. You know, you front and face your cereal boxes. You put the new one at the back, and you take the one from the front. And but yeah, we had like 6 months worth of food. Everybody did back then. It was just, that's how you lived up there, right? Just in case, being prepared. But you know, that's the thing. And like power, electricity is, you know, about 90 years ago, you know, a lot of people didn't even have electricity. And you know, we all rely on it today. And that's where I'm saying it's not like talking about going back and living in the past, but it's just trying to understand how quickly things have changed. And you know, back around, well, let's say 1925, 100 years ago, the majority of city people had electricity, but only, give or take, you know, 10% of the people in rural communities had electricity. And in I think it was 35, they passed the, you know, Rural Electric Expansion Act or something like that, and where they brought electricity to the rural communities. So again, you know, a lot of people, even here in the United States, didn't have electricity 90 years ago. They just, it was normal to not have it. And today we can't imagine not having it. And that's the experience, the lessons, the, you know, sharing information with you, is the thinking that, you know, how can I live with less electricity? And you know, if you don't require much, then it's easier to make it on your own with some sort of generator, with, you know, some solar panels. And I mean, they've come so far with the batteries and the panels in that today. They're relatively inexpensive and store, you know, not like the old golf cart batteries of years ago. And so those are the kinds of things that, you know, I want you to be thinking about, is less reliance on electricity and the grid, and less reliance on the grocery stores and where your food's coming from. Those, and no matter where you are in your place today, is, you know, you can work toward getting better at that. So, you know, if you're in an apartment in the city, what can you do to become less reliant on those things? If you're out in the country, living on a homestead, you know, you can still do more to be less reliant on those things. And that's just, you know, where it is. It's not being a hermit. It's not living in a cave. It's not disappearing from society, heading up to Alaska and heading off into the wild to never be heard from again. You know, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about living comfortably in the modern world and enjoying the conveniences that we have, but making it a lifestyle to be less and less reliant on those things, and that you just, you know, less stress, more happiness, and more freedom doing that, right? Freedom! Because that's what it's all about.